Hi, I'm Brian Granulotti, President and CEO of the Atlantic Health System. At Atlantic Health, we believe in helping our communities stay informed about the healthcare issues that affect them every day. That's why we're proud to support healthcare programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, United Airlines, Atlantic Health System, building healthier communities, New Jersey Resources. Choose New Jersey. Our mission is attracting companies to the Garden State. The Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community. And by the North Ward Center. Promotional support provided by AM 970 The Answer. And by NJ Advance Media.
Welcome to State of Affairs. I am Steve Adubato. More importantly, we are coming to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio in Newark, New Jersey. You know the studio well. This is Ryan Haygood, President and CEO, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Good to see you, my friend.
It's good to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me, as always.
Anything going on in your world?
You know, it's a busy time
Didn't you just have a conference? Didn't you just have a big conference?
We did.
Didn't you just use the number 94%?
Sure.
And what does that number mean? I'm sorry if I was going to joke around. I realize you're serious business. 94% of what did what?
Sure. So there was a rally for the 94%, which Steve was really inspired by a meeting that I and a bunch of other folks had with the governor back in May.
Governor Phil Murphy.
Governor Phil Murphy. And it was really a meeting to follow up on one of his transition committee reports. I had the honor of chairing one of Governor Murphy's transition committees, and in this committee, we were able to get in a number of policy recommendations around economic justice, around criminal justice reform, around voting. And so this meeting in May with the governor was really to reassemble a number of folks who were working on the transition document and who had been advocating for these issues. And Steve, it was at that meeting that the governor shared with us that he'd received 94% of the black vote. And this, frankly, was an interesting thing to share, given that folks in the room, mostly black, were very aware of how Governor Murphy got elected. So yes, he got 94% of the black vote. Governor Murphy got 82% of the Latino vote, but he only gets 47% of the white vote. Put differently, his opponent, Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno, got the majority, 53% of the white vote. So but
Why
for
is all
this,
this relevant?
Well, because but for this robust support from black and Latino voters, it's unlikely that Governor Murphy becomes the governor. And so for us, the question is, what is the value, Steve? What's the value of 94% of the black vote? What's the value of 82% of the Latino vote? What's the value of near unanimous support from a particular demographic here, black voters?
Okay, you're defining value. Let me interpret this.
Sure.
In terms of public policy, what is it that you think, and your colleagues, those who voted for Governor Murphy, who happen to be African-American and Latino, but let's stay in the African-American community, what does he owe?
Sure. So I think what made Governor Murphy so attractive as a candidate was the way he campaigned. He talked a lot, for example, about his leadership on the NAACP's national board. He talked a lot about his heart for social justice issues. He spoke very directly to issues that black folks, Latino folks, people in New Jersey cities were facing around employment, around access to wealth, around criminal justice reform, around building an inclusive democracy in New Jersey. So the truth is, so at that time in May, he wasn't doing particularly well. In that meeting, we asked him in response to his point about getting 94% of the black vote, Governor Murphy, are you reminding us of your popularity among black voters when you say that? Or are you telling us you got 94% of the black vote because you have a specific plan to address some of the challenges that black voters in particular are facing in the state?
Ryan Haygood, which one was it?
At that time, he didn't really have a clear plan. He definitely indicated that he has a heart for black voters. He has a heart for people of color more broadly.
So his heart's in the right place.
But I think you need to, along with the heart, you have to have specific plans to address real challenges faced by black folks in this state.
Well, let's break this down. By the way, Steve Adubato, if you're listening on the radio, Steve Adubato here, that's the only reason I do that, with Ryan Haygood from New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. When we talk about, there are three key areas. When we talk about social justice reform, particularly for youth, changing youth social justice, what does that mean?
Sure. So one of the challenges, a lot of the work that we do at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice is we look at some of New Jersey's racial disparities. And as you know, you and I have had the benefit of a long relationship. We talk a lot about these issues on camera, off camera.
That's right.
So New Jersey has some of the worst black to white racial disparities in America. I'll just share a couple.
Yeah.
So if you look at the racial wealth gap, New Jersey is one of the wealthiest states in America.
Medium income white family
Median
is?
income median net worth for white families, $271,000.
African American.
Highest in America. But by contrast, the median net worth for New Jersey's black families, $5,900. Yes, those numbers are staggering and they bear repeating. So for white families, the median net worth, this is not income, this is what you have when you don't have income, right? So the median net worth for New Jersey's white families is $271,000. This is the highest in America. But by contrast, for Latino families in New Jersey, the median net worth is $7,020. For black families, it's $5,900.
How are they living on it?
That's the thing. It's very difficult. We have some of the widest racial wealth gaps in America. So the question for us when we're speaking to Governor Murphy is, look, we know you've inherited. This is not a new phenomenon, right? We're talking, Dr. King came to New Jersey, to Newark in particular, 50 years ago this year to build support for the Poor People's Campaign. So this is something that Governor Murphy has inherited. It's not fair to say that this is a new phenomenon on his watch.
What should he do other than raising the minimum wage?
So minimum wage is a part of the way you deal with pay equity, right? Income inequity, but you have to have a specific plan. So some other states, for example, the governor of Massachusetts, who's a Republican, convened a roundtable of some of the best thinkers, academics, advocates, scholars, impacted people to look at wealth in that Commonwealth. And he seated that table with about $10 million to act on some of the policy recommendations that those folks would come up with. So part of this for Governor Murphy is to have a specific plan to interrupt those racial disparities in wealth. It can be done. We've got some of the finest thinkers, some of the finest institutions, some of the finest advocacy organizations in New Jersey. Governor Murphy could definitely take a page from the governor's playbook in Massachusetts.
Is he committed to doing that?
So I think we are starting to see a commitment to that. You know, he's following the rally we had, you know, as you mentioned at the top of our conversation, we had a rally for the 94%.
Right.
To be clear, this was not an anti-Murphy rally.
It was not?
It was not. It definitely was not. In fact, it was sort of conceived from the idea when President Obama was in office. You know, I was working for a national organization. He would often say to us and to other advocates, you know, if what you want from me is to do this particular thing, you have to make me do it. You have to give me the political cover to do it.
And that is what you're
that's what inspired the rally for the 94% to focus Governor Murphy on these critical issues impacting black and other voters.
In the interest of time, I'm not trying to stay on this. Right to vote for people with criminal convictions. Why is that an issue that disproportionately affects the black community?
Yeah, so in this last election, we saw that voters in Florida, through an amazing grassroots initiative, enfranchised 1.4 million people with criminal convictions. It's inspiring because the truth is there should be no connection between the criminal justice system and voting. So we think that New Jersey is poised to be the next Florida. There are 100,000 people in New Jersey who can't vote because of a criminal conviction.
You think that's antiquated? Sorry for interrupting, Ryan Haygood. Do you think that's just wrong thinking?
Absolutely. First of all,
someone says you got to pay the price.
But what's the price?
The price is you can't vote.
But how's that a punishment? So the truth is that what we've learned about voting is that it actually helps to advance criminal justice aims. Voting helps to reduce recidivism, helps to facilitate re-entry. So if we really care about criminal justice reform, voting is a critical piece to that reform. If you withhold the vote, you actually undermine criminal justice aims. So there are 100,000 people in New Jersey who can't vote. There's been legislation introduced by Shavonda Sumter, Senator Cunningham, Senator Ronald Rice, some very courageous leaders, and I promise that we're going to see some real traction on this bill.
The governor's on board on this?
So we think the governor has indicated a commitment to this bill, to this issue, and part of the campaign was really to help reinforce his commitment to the issue.
Let me try one more. Legalizing marijuana. Why, again, is that an issue that you and your colleagues raised with the governor as it relates to the 94% of the vote in the black community going for Governor Murphy?
Yeah, so there's a lot of conversation around legalization. We see this as a trend nationally of marijuana. Part of it is that however it happens, it's got to be done with a social justice lens in mind. So we know that Black and brown communities have been most impacted by the war on drugs. There should be reparative restoration in communities when we talk about restoration. So part of it is, look, there are real issues related to who's currently incarcerated around marijuana and other drug offenses.
Disproportionately Blacks over whites.
So however legalization happens, it should apply retroactively. So those who are incarcerated for those offenses should be released. They should be automatic. Absolutely. That's got to be part of the legislation. Otherwise, how are you making it legal going forward when folks are still caught up in a system?
So we're going to make it legal, but if you did it, if you smoked pot 4 years ago, you're still doing time or whatever it is, that doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense at all. There should also be automatic expungement for issues like, so I think part of what it means to make people whole when you do social justice is to look back at those who've been most impacted by those policies.
I got 30 seconds. You keep talking about Governor Murphy. I'm going to play the word game with you.
Sure.
I say Donald Trump, you say?
The people. Yeah, I say the people. I think this is a moment. The rally was inspired by the people. It wasn't so much about elected officials, even though we're there to hold Governor Murphy accountable. We're really there to say, people, there are two pieces to voting. One happens in the ballot box. The other happens when you leave the ballot box and you hold your elected officials accountable. So yes, Steve, this is a difficult national moment, but here in New Jersey, we know that change has always happened from the ground up, and that's what we're doing on these issues right now.
Ryan Haygood. He is the president and chief executive officer of a great organization called New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, and he's our friend.
Thanks for having me, Steve, as always.
All the best. Stay right there. This is State of Affairs. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
State of Affairs is pleased to welcome John Jacobi, professor of health law and policy at Seton Hall Law School. Good to see you, John.
Good to see you. Thank you.
One of the areas you focus on is the question of parity when it comes to health care payment. What does that mean?
The parity movement has been around for 20 or 25 years.
Is it a movement?
The first big federal bill was passed in 1996. The idea behind mental health parity is that coverage for mental health services should be on parity, should be the same essentially as coverage for physical health services.
By the way, before you go any further, I should have clarified this is part of our ongoing series on the future of health care and the question of parity in terms of what's paid for and what's not is a huge part of the future, right?
It is. It is. For a couple of reasons.
Go ahead.
One because there has been problems in New Jersey and elsewhere of people with mental health issues getting access to appropriate care. And the second thing is that as we move to an integrated healthcare delivery system where physical health and mental health occur in the same place, we don't want there to be confusion over what's paid for and what's not.
So hold on one second. Are we saying that if you seek and receive mental health services, that insurance companies and others, the government as well, don't look at it the same as if you have a broken arm?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's low-hanging fruit that's been picked off. So insurance companies have worked pretty hard in response to federal legislation and state legislation to be on the right side of the law here. And what they've done well, I think, more or less, is to make sure that there aren't payment limits, that is...
like a cap?
A cap on the number of visits or on lifetime expenditures for mental health services. Insurance companies have done quite a good job with that. Here's the problem that arises still, and that's conceptually quite a difficult problem. And that is that at times insurance companies will deny coverage because they will assert the coverage is not medically necessary. And insurance companies can do that. They can review a doctor's order and determine whether it's medically necessary or not. Mental health parity requires that the process that insurance companies go through be identical or on parity for physical health and mental health services. Sometimes it's not.
I'm curious about this. We talked before we got on the air about Medicaid. What does the question of Medicaid and the payments as it relates to Medicaid have to do with the future of health care?
Medicaid is an incredibly important payment system. I would argue that Medicaid is one of the most important government
Explain what Medicaid is versus Medicare.
Medicaid is a program for low-income and disabled people, and Medicare is a social insurance program for retirees and some long-term disabled people. So Medicaid covers a very large number of births in New Jersey, a very large percentage of the nursing home days in New Jersey. It covers people with very serious, complex medical conditions who have low socioeconomic status. Very hard group of people to treat, a very hard group of people to help with their health status. Medicaid needs to change from an insurance program that just pays for services when someone goes to the doctor and gets services to one that helps to organize healthcare services.
What does it mean, organize healthcare services?
Think
And by the
about
way, the government's supposed to do this?
Well, the government should facilitate it. The government, created Medicare. Medicare pays for services. The question is, how will that payment system provide incentives for healthcare providers to look beyond the narrow medical condition that someone presents with, and instead look at that person's entire context, so that if someone comes in with diabetes or COPD, the healthcare provider will have an incentive in a reformed Medicaid system to look at that person's entire
As opposed to it
context.
being fragmented, if you will?
Yeah.
The fragmented nature of the way patients who fall under this Medicaid category are treated medically is not healthy, is it?
It's not healthy. It's not, and it's not just Medicaid, but Medicaid is probably the most important program for which we should look to fragmentation and fix it.
Quick question on this on legislation. If you want to check it out, it happens to be Assembly Bill 2031 that has worked through some of the steps that the state needs to be involved in terms of all insurance companies and consumers, so they better understand what they can get and not get as having to do with access. I know it sounds jargony, in the weeds. Why does this matter?
It matters because we don't want people to think they have insurance and then find out when they get care
You mean the
and
small
they get
print?
home. Well, sometimes it's not even in the small print, but yeah, it is.
So what's this legislation do?
It helps people get access to coverage so that when they get health care services, they know whether their coverage will provide all the care that they need, and not be surprised when they get home and not have coverage.
John Jacobi is a professor of health law and policy at Seton Hall Law School. I want to thank you for joining us. Very important conversation. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Stay right there. We'll be right back. I'm Steve Adubato, right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
State of Affairs is pleased to welcome Senator Steven Oroho, who represents the 24th Legislative District, which is where, Senator?
Up in northwest corner of New Jersey. It's got all of Sussex County, 11 municipalities in Warren, and Mount Olive in Morris.
So now let's talk about this.
It's the largest in the state.
Yeah, yep, and folks there are just as concerned as everywhere else in the state about tax policy. We've talked to you many times before, and you've talked about, hey, our tax policy doesn't make sense in the state. What does that mean?
First of all, we put so much of the burden on residents, as opposed to not putting more of the burden on out-of-staters. Like, for example, we talked about the Transportation Trust Fund.
Right.
And right there, we had a major tax restructuring, and people were annoyed at the gas tax, understandably. But quite frankly, it was all going to property taxes. So what New Jersey, unfortunately, for years, on a bipartisan basis, both Republicans and Democrats, was a debt, spend, and hide. And it was raising debt,
Sure.
spending out of control for things, and it was hidden because, like in the Transportation Trust Fund, it was the debt all falling on the backs of New Jersey residents and falling to property taxes.
Unfair?
Very, very unfair. Very unfair.
Let me ask you this. Let's talk about tax fairness. We've had Governor Murphy on when he was a candidate. We'll have him back in early 2019, talk about fiscal policy in the state. The governor has talked about New Jersey being the innovation state and looking to attract folks to come here. Great state for innovation, great state to do business. How could you possibly be against that?
No, I don't think anybody's against that.
What's the challenge?
The challenge is, how do you make the state affordable or competitive for capital? We had Amazon. Was looking
As
at
of we're
West-
doing today, I don't want to date ourselves. We're doing Jackie, what's the date? I know we're doing it in the middle of November. It looks like we lost that deal.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with this?
Well, first of all, it's companies who want to invest capital to have a decent rate of return. And capital is like water. It follows the path of least resistance to success. And the cost of government and the tax policies all have a factor in whether you're competitive to people want to invest capital. And I've always said, capital equals investment, investment equals jobs. And when we have more people working and more jobs being created, New Jersey does terrific.
But Senator, let me ask you this. Are we saying that no matter what happens with the governor and the folks who are trying to promote this innovation initiative, and by the way, we have a relationship with Choose New Jersey, which is very much a part of this, are you saying no matter how effective the marketing is, the tax policy or the perception of the state trumps, sorry for using that expression, that whole effort?
It could, depending upon how much value people think they get from the investment they're going to make.
Define the value. Is it ROI?
That's part of it. The return on investment, certainly, because that's something that's easily measured. But there's a lot of other intangibles that go with it. We got great assets. We do. We got our New Jersey workforce. We have an excellent education system.
Access to airports, transportation system.
Our location's great. Our location's great. But our cost of government and our cost, whether it be fees and taxes, make it a lot of times too unattractive for somebody to invest here. Now, we can easily get that value back.
Easily. Hold on. We had
so.
the Senate president here, Senator Steve Sweeney. Steve Adubato here with Senator Oroho, who's very much involved in fiscal policy in the state. We had the Senate president talking about his initiative.
Yeah.
Were you part of that?
I was a co-chair.
You were the co-chair of that initiative.
Did a great job. Yeah.
And the senator and you and others.
Very hard.
They were looking to cut the cost of government. And one of the things they looked at was municipal consolidation, shared services, merging local communities. You say?
The idea of shared services, we need as many shared services as we can
Should we
get.
force it? Should the state mandate it, Senator?
The idea of mandating, because smaller communities, we actually found out, and Mark Pfeiffer, who's an expert in this area, found out that a lot of times the small communities are more efficient. They're actually less per capita. However, the idea of shared services, and one of the other big issues in there, was the regionalization within school districts. We could go from over 600 school districts to less than half, or just about half of that.
Which would do what with property taxes?
Which would help bend the cost curve of property taxes we have now, because it would help reduce the administrative costs and whatnot. Because let's face it, on a K-12 district, everybody's going to the same high school.
That's right.
But I think Senate President Sweeney had done a terrific job. He's out there working extremely hard. What I said easily is because the assets are always going to be the same. We got the workforce that's great. We have a location that's great. We have an infrastructure that is terrific, and now they're going to properly maintain it.
Let me ask you this. We have some of your other colleagues coming in today on the Republican side of the aisle, and I feel compelled to ask them, and also Democrats, others on this question. President Trump, as he enters his third year in office, a little over halfway through as we get to this point, how's he doing?
I think you look at the results. The unemployment rate is down. Significantly, was it less than 4%? I think the results are there. I would wish the rhetoric would be different.
The tweeting?
Well, the tweeting, but the rhetoric on many sides.
Well, let's deal with the president right now.
Not just the president.
Senator, I've known you for a few years. I've never known you to be respectfully a name caller. I've never known you to be someone who demonizes your opponent.
My mother would be mad at me.
Well, my mother would be as well, and that's why I don't. But my point is this. It's not about partisanship at all. What it is about tone and tenor and demeanor, executive demeanor, if you will.
Right.
You don't conduct yourself that way.
I don't, and I try to do it by example. And I try not to, go personally attacking anybody, because that's not the way I was
But isn't that
raised.
also part of the way you've been able to work with folks on the other side of the aisle?
Absolutely.
Well, then what advice would you have for the president in that regard?
I would actually, my advice to the president would be, we want to be classy Republicans. I want to be a classy Republican. It doesn't matter in how you treat people. Words do matter. The results, you can't argue with the results either. I mean,
You mean mostly economic policy?
Economic policy, and the idea that, listen, look, all the different trade deals and whatnot. America has always helped everybody, right? So let's make sure we have fair trade. But at the same time, the tone, the tenor, That does matter. I mean, it does. One of the most important
2 seconds left,
books,
go ahead.
One of the most important books I ever read was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Great book.
Right? Excellent book. How to Stop Worrying and Start Living is another one. But how to Win Friends and Influence People. And you know what? People want to be treated with respect.
On that note, Senator Steven Oroho is from the 24th Legislative District. He's been engaged in fiscal policy in the state and dealing with trying to reduce cost, if you will,
right,
and try to keep taxes down as well. But I'll tell you what, when we continue to talk about the governor's initiative as it relates to this innovation state, we'll have you and your colleagues on as well. But as always, you're a gentleman, Senator, and we appreciate the civility of the discourse.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Stay right there.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Adubato. This is State of Affairs. Let's continue the conversation. So follow me on Twitter at Steve Adubato. See you next time. Promise, from the NJTV studio. See you then.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, United Airlines, Atlantic Health System, New Jersey Resources, Choose New Jersey, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, and by the Northward Center.
How do you create change? By cultivating hope. And we see that every day. In the eyes of our preschoolers, in the souls of the seniors in our Adult Day program, in the minds of the students at Robert Treat Academy, a national Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, in the passion of children in our Youth Leadership Development Program, in our commitment to connections at the Center for Autism, and in the heart of our community, the Northward Center, creating opportunities for equity, education, and growth.